My name is Ella Puckett. I'm 39 years old, and right now I'm sitting in an almost painfully quiet living room, staring at the exact spot where my husband stood 3 weeks ago and announced that our 12-year marriage had become too boring for him. Victor was 37. We'd been together 13 years, married for 12, and had no children by choice. Victor used to joke that kids would tie us down. At the time, I thought he meant he liked our freedom. Looking back, I think Victor had always been terrified of anything that felt permanent. The Sunday everything changed started exactly like hundreds of Sundays before it. I was in the kitchen, meal prepping grilled chicken and vegetables for the work week. Music was playing quietly from my phone. Containers were lined across the counter. Then Victor walked in dragging a suitcase. That alone wasn't strange. His job occasionally required overnight travel. What was strange was everything else. He was wearing the charcoal shirt he saved for nice restaurants, his expensive watch, and the cologne he normally complained was too fancy for everyday life. I glanced at the suitcase. Going somewhere? He didn't answer immediately. Ella, we need to talk. There are sentences that seem ordinary until somebody you love says them in exactly the wrong tone. I put down the spatula. Victor stood beside the kitchen island with one hand wrapped around the suitcase handle. And strangely, he was smiling. Not happily, almost expectantly. I'm bored, he said. I waited. This life, this routine, everything is so predictable. I feel like I'm suffocating. 13 years teaches you when interrupting somebody will only make the conversation longer. So I let him continue. I met someone. There it was. Her name is Daniela. I remember looking at the chicken sizzling in the pan because somehow that seemed easier than looking at my husband. Daniela understands me in ways you never have, he continued. She's spontaneous, passionate. She actually wants to experience things. I turned off the burner. And you don't think I do? That's not what I'm saying. It was exactly what he was saying. Victor exhaled dramatically. I just need excitement again. Daniela makes me feel alive. Daniela. Even her name had apparently become part of whatever fantasy he had constructed. I'm going to stay with her for a while, he said. I need space to figure out who I am. Then he actually made little quotation marks with his fingers when he said, find myself. Something inside me almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes disappointment becomes so enormous that your brain searches desperately for any other emotion. I closed the last meal container. Okay. Victor blinked. Okay? Yes. That's all you're going to say? What would you like me to say? His expression changed. You could fight for me. That sentence told me more than the confession had. Victor didn't just want to leave. He wanted a scene. He wanted tears, begging, maybe me blocking the doorway while he heroically chose passion over his devastated wife. Instead, I placed the container in the refrigerator. You already packed a suitcase, Victor. That's exactly the problem with you. I looked at him. You're like a robot, nothing affects you. That wasn't true. My chest felt like somebody had wrapped wire around my ribs. But pain and performance are different things. I hope you find whatever you think you're looking for. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then Victor grabbed his suitcase so tightly his knuckles turned pale. I'll be at Daniela's if you decide you want to discuss this like adults. I know where you'll be. He stormed out. The front door slammed hard enough to knock the magnetic work calendar from the wall. I walked over and picked it up. And that was when something caught my attention. Thursday. Client dinner. The previous Thursday. Client dinner. 3 weeks earlier. Networking event. Before that, client dinner. Nearly every Thursday for 3 months, Victor had supposedly been working late. Suddenly, Daniela didn't feel very new. I stood there holding the calendar for maybe 30 seconds. Then I put it back on the wall, made myself tea, sat at the dining table, and called my friend Harrison. He answered on the second ring. Everything okay? I need a divorce attorney. Silence. Ella? The good kind. What happened? My husband left for his girlfriend's apartment about 5 minutes ago. Another silence. Then Harrison said, I have 3 names. The first was Bethany Kellogg. Harrison described her as terrifyingly competent. She could meet me Monday morning. I barely slept that night, but I didn't spend it crying. I spent it documenting. I photographed every room in the house. Furniture, electronics, artwork, documents. In our bedroom, I found Victor's wedding ring sitting on the dresser. He'd left it carefully centered beside his watch box, like some kind of dramatic symbol. I photographed that too. Then I backed up years of texts and financial records. By 9 Monday morning, I was sitting across from Bethany. She was maybe 50, sharply dressed, with the calm expression of somebody who had watched hundreds of marriages explode and no longer found explosions impressive. Her first question surprised me. Did Victor tell you where he was going? Yes, his girlfriend's apartment. Her pen stopped. He specifically admitted there was another woman? Yes. And said he intended to stay with her? Yes. Bethany leaned back. That helps. Apparently, Victor's dramatic exit speech had done more than hurt me. It had documented intent. He had voluntarily left the marital home while openly acknowledging an affair. Did he take belongings? Clothes, laptop, toiletries, some jewelry, his passport. Wedding ring? Left it. Bethany nodded slowly. Good. For the first time since Victor left, I felt something shift. Not happiness. Control. By Wednesday, the divorce petition was filed. Bethany also recommended requesting exclusive, temporary use of the house. Then she asked whether I knew anything about Daniela. I didn't. So I looked. Daniela Volkov was 44, and considerably less mysterious once public records entered the picture. 2 arrests involving drunk and disorderly behavior. 1 assault arrest where charges had later been dropped. Multiple complaints at her condo complex involving noise and aggressive confrontations. She had apparently also been banned from Victor's gym after repeated arguments with male members. Bethany didn't exaggerate the situation. We're not claiming she intends to hurt you, she explained. We're establishing legal boundaries before emotions escalate. Daniela was not to come to my house or workplace or contact me directly. The paperwork was served at Daniela's condo, which accomplished something else. It officially documented that Victor was staying there. Thursday morning, my phone began vibrating at 7. By 7:15, I had 12 missed calls from Victor and 8 from a number I didn't recognize. Then came the messages. What the hell is this? A protective order? Seriously, you can't divorce me because I'm trying to be happy. I did not abandon our home. Then, I'm coming back today. Another message appeared from the unknown number. This is Daniela. We need to talk woman to woman. You're being ridiculous. I screenshotted everything. Sent it to Bethany. Then blocked both numbers. 20 minutes later, my doorbell camera chimed. Victor was standing on the porch. Daniela was beside him. She looked almost exactly like her booking photograph, except now she wore a leather jacket, oversized sunglasses, and enough gold jewelry to make subtlety impossible. Victor pounded on the door. Ella! I stayed inside. Open the door! Then Daniela stepped forward. This is his house too! She slammed her palm against the door. I called Bethany. Don't engage, she said immediately. Call police if they refuse to leave. 5 minutes later, Daniela kicked the bottom of my front door. Once, then again. The third kick rattled the frame. I dialed emergency services. There's a woman attempting to force her way into my house, I said. There's an active protective order preventing her from being here. Police arrived in less than 10 minutes. Daniela immediately began arguing. Victor started shouting over her. This is my home. My wife can't keep me outside. One officer asked Daniela whether she had received legal paperwork at her residence. Daniela hesitated. Yes, but... Then you knew you weren't permitted to come here. Her entire posture changed. Victor suddenly looked much less confident. Daniela was handcuffed first. Then Victor lunged toward the doorway. Ella, tell them this is insane! An officer stepped between us. Victor tried pushing around him. Sir, stop! I just want to talk to my wife! He shoved forward again. The second officer grabbed his arm. Victor exploded. This is her fault. She's doing this because I left. He twisted toward me. You wanted this, Ella. I hadn't moved from behind the doorway. No, I said quietly. You did. Victor kept struggling. I looked at the man I had loved for 13 years. No, Victor, you wanted excitement. The officer pulled his arms behind him. Victor's face went completely pale when the handcuffs clicked. I watched through the window as he and Daniela were placed into separate police cars. 3 weeks earlier, Victor had thought he was walking out of a boring marriage and into some passionate new life. Standing there that morning, watching flashing lights reflect across my driveway, I realized something he hadn't yet understood. He hadn't escaped his old life, he had detonated it, and the consequences were only beginning. By noon, Victor's brother Simon was calling me. I actually like Simon, so I answered. Ella, what the hell happened? Victor called me from jail. Good morning to you too. He says you had him arrested for trying to come home. I closed my laptop. Victor announced he was leaving me for another woman, moved into her apartment, and then showed up here with that woman after she'd been served a protective order. Daniela started kicking my door. Victor tried pushing past the police. Silence. Finally, Simon said, Wait, Daniela? Yes. He told me he was staying at a hotel. Of course he had. He's been living with Daniela Volkov. The woman from his gym? Yes. The one who got banned? That's her. Simon went quiet again. Jesus, Victor. After that, the story Victor had been telling people began unraveling surprisingly fast. He'd apparently told friends he requested a temporary separation because he needed time to work on himself. According to his version, I became vindictive, locked him out, and immediately filed for divorce. Our friend Raj called Sunday evening. Ella, 12 years is a long time. Maybe you two should just talk. He moved in with his girlfriend, Raj. A pause. Girlfriend? Yes. He told me he was taking space. He was, at Daniela's apartment. Another pause. Oh, Kelly sent me a message saying she couldn't believe I would throw away 12 years over a rough patch. I replied with one sentence. Victor left me for another woman, she called 10 minutes later. He told us there wasn't anyone else. I almost admired the efficiency of his lies. Almost. Victor made bail Friday and immediately found new ways to reach me without technically contacting me directly. First, he called my workplace, claiming there was a family medical emergency. Fortunately, I'd already warned my boss. Then he showed up crying at my mother's house, claiming I had become unstable and aggressive. My mother called me afterward, amused rather than frightened. He apparently forgot I have a doorbell camera too, she said. I saved the whole performance, but Saturday brought something more serious. I was standing at the grocery checkout when my credit card was declined. That made no sense. I'd paid the balance days earlier. I stepped aside and called the bank. The representative checked the account. Ma'am, there was an $8,000 cash advance this morning. My stomach tightened. I didn't make that. It was completed in person at our downtown branch by an authorized user, Victor. Years earlier, when he had been between jobs, I'd added him to 2 of my credit cards. We had separate bank accounts, and I'd completely forgotten those cards. Cancel them, I said, immediately. I reported the transaction as unauthorized and drove straight to Bethany's office. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back. He's making this easier. He stole $8,000. And now we have documented financial misconduct on top of everything else. The investigation later showed where the money went. $3,000 toward Daniela's legal expenses, $2,500 on designer clothing and accessories, $1,500 at a luxury spa. The remaining $1,000 disappeared through cash withdrawals. But the strangest part came when Victor emailed my work account demanding access to his money. He wrote that Daniela's accounts had been frozen because of the arrest, and that I was deliberately making them homeless. I forwarded the message to Bethany. Then curiosity got the better of me. I checked public court records. Daniela's accounts hadn't been frozen because of her arrest. She owed roughly $45,000 in back child support, connected to 2 previous relationships. Victor had traded what he called a suffocatingly stable marriage for a woman with mounting debt, legal trouble, and a talent for chaos. The grass hadn't been greener. It had been spray painted. Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was Dr. Rodriguez, the couple's therapist Victor and I had briefly seen 2 years earlier. "Ella, Victor contacted me about restarting counseling." I nearly laughed. "He did? He says you're experiencing a mental health crisis." That stopped me. "What exactly did he tell you?" "That you became paranoid and controlling, accused him of an affair, and forced him out of the home." I stared at the wall. "Doctor," Victor admitted the affair directly to me. He moved into Daniela's apartment. I have his messages. And he changed his mailing address. There was a long silence. "That is significantly different from what I was told." "Yes. I don't think restarting couples counseling would be appropriate." "Neither do I." Wednesday was Daniela's hearing for violating the protective order. I had to testify about what happened at my house. Daniela arrived wearing a suit that looked strangely theatrical. Victor appeared dressed as though he were heading to a nightclub afterward. Neither looked at me until I took the stand. The doorbell footage did most of the work. Daniela kicking my door. Victor shouting. Both refusing to leave. Daniela received 30 days plus probation. Victor received community service and mandatory anger management classes related to his confrontation with the officers. Then the judge asked them to confirm their current addresses. They gave different ones. I glanced at Bethany. She raised one eyebrow. Outside court, I discovered why. Daniela had thrown Victor out. He followed me into the parking garage. "Happy now?" I stopped beside my car. "What?" "You ruined everything." His face looked exhausted. The confident man who had walked out carrying a suitcase barely 3 weeks earlier was gone. "You ruined everything when you decided our marriage was boring." "It was boring," his voice echoed through the garage. "All you care about is schedules and work and meal prep and your stupid gym routine. Daniela made me feel wanted." I studied him. "And where is Daniela now?" His face changed. "She needed space." I waited. Finally, he muttered. "She said I brought too much drama." For a moment, I genuinely didn't know whether to laugh. "You left your marriage for excitement, and Daniela thinks you're too dramatic?" "This isn't funny." "No, it isn't." He stepped closer. "I didn't know about the child support, or the arrests, or her financial problems. Maybe you should have known someone longer than 3 months before blowing up 13 years. His eyes widened. "How did you know it was 3 months?" That was all the confirmation I needed. The Thursday dinners, the networking events, the late nights. 3 months. Victor realized what he'd admitted a second too late. Then he snapped. "You never made me feel alive!" Security started walking toward us. Victor kept shouting. I deserved passion. I deserved adventure. I unlocked my car. "How's the adventure going?" I drove away while security was still trying to calm him down. Friday, the credit card company confirmed that the $8,000 withdrawal was being treated as unauthorized activity. Bethany added everything to our divorce file. Adultery, abandonment, financial misconduct, harassment. Every time Victor tried to regain control, he created another piece of evidence. Then he launched a crowdfunding page. "Help me escape my abusive marriage." According to Victor, I had monitored him, isolated him from friends, controlled his money, and weaponized the courts after he tried to leave. He needed donations for an attorney and safe housing. It raised $50 from his aunt. Then somebody reported it, and the page disappeared. I thought that would be the lowest point. I was wrong. Saturday morning, I opened my curtains and stared at my front lawn. Garbage was everywhere. Black trash bags had been ripped open across the grass. Food containers, bottles, papers, Old clothes. For several seconds, I just stood there. Then I remembered the cameras. At 3:07 that morning, Victor's car pulled up. The footage showed him unloading bag after bag onto my property. I called the police. While waiting, I noticed an envelope among the garbage. It wasn't addressed to Victor. It was addressed to Daniela, but not at her condo. At another woman's house. Police traced the address. It belonged to Daniela's ex-girlfriend, where Victor had apparently been sleeping on the couch after Daniela threw him out. Victor had managed to expose his own location while committing another offense on camera. The officer looked from the envelope to my security footage. He's currently out on bail, correct? Yes. The officer sighed. We'll handle it. They arrested Victor that afternoon. This time, he didn't immediately come home. And as I watched the police cruiser disappear from my camera feed, I thought the chaos had finally reached its limit. Then Victor's parents called me, and I learned the $8,000 he'd taken from me wasn't even close to the worst thing he'd done. Victor spent nearly a week in jail before his parents bailed him out. By then, the divorce was moving quickly. The affair was documented. His departure from the house was documented. So were the credit card withdrawal, the harassment, and both arrests. Then his parents, Garrett and Eleanor, called me. We hadn't spoken properly in almost 2 years. Ella, Eleanor said, we finally know what happened. Her voice sounded exhausted. Victor told us you were emotionally abusive. He said he was afraid to leave you. I figured he'd told you something like that. Garrett spoke next. We believed him because he's our son. We shouldn't have. Then Eleanor told me something I hadn't known. Victor had emptied an investment account his parents had maintained for him. $20,000. Gone. Some had apparently gone toward Daniela's expenses. The rest disappeared into hotels, restaurants, and luxury purchases. He lied to everyone, Eleanor whispered. They even offered to testify if Bethany needed them. By the final divorce hearing, Victor looked nothing like the man who had walked out of my kitchen with that smug little smile. His clothes were wrinkled, his face was tired. Still, he tried one final time to make himself the victim. Your Honor, I was emotionally vulnerable. My wife's neglect pushed me towards someone else. I made mistakes, but I shouldn't lose everything because I fell in love. The judge was a woman in her 60s who had clearly heard enough. She reviewed the evidence in front of her. The admitted affair, Victor voluntarily leaving our home, the unauthorized $8,000 withdrawal, the arrests, the harassment, the false stories he told friends, family, and even our former therapist. Then she looked directly at him. Mr. Puckett, you did not simply fall in love. You made a series of deliberate decisions and repeatedly blamed your wife when those decisions produced consequences. Victor's face hardened. The divorce was granted. No spousal support. I kept the house. Victor kept his personal belongings and vehicle, but he owed restitution connected to the credit card withdrawal. The protective order remained in place. When the judge finished, Victor actually laughed. So she wins? Nobody answered. He looked at me. You get your boring house back, Ella. Your boring meal prep. Your boring schedules. Your boring little life. The judge interrupted him. Mr. Puckett, considering the criminal matters you're still facing, I suggest you spend less time criticizing your former wife's lifestyle and more time addressing your own. That finally silenced him. I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. A few months later, my life looked almost exactly like it had before Victor left. And that surprised me. I still meal prepped on Sundays. I still went to the gym on schedule. I upgraded my security system, repaired the damage around the house, and eventually recovered financially from what Victor had done. But the house felt different. Quiet wasn't tension anymore. It was peace. I eventually started seeing a man from my hiking club. Nothing dramatic. No whirlwind declarations or midnight adventures. On our third date, I jokingly apologized for being predictable. He smiled. Predictable isn't bad. Sometimes it means dependable. I thought about that sentence for days. Victor, meanwhile, moved back in with his parents. He lost his job after too many absences involving jail and court appearances. Daniela disappeared from his life almost immediately. Simon occasionally checked in on me. The last time we spoke, he told me Victor was already on dating apps. Apparently, his profile said he was starting over after escaping a toxic marriage. I laughed when I heard that. Some people rewrite the lesson because accepting it would mean admitting they caused the disaster. Victor wanted excitement. He got police cars, lawyers, debt, court hearings, community service, and a criminal record. Last Sunday, I stood in my kitchen preparing chicken and vegetables for the week. Same containers, same routine, same quiet house. For years, Victor had treated stability like a prison. Now I understood something he never did. There is nothing boring about building a life you don't need to escape from. And as I closed the refrigerator door, I realized I hadn't lost the exciting life Victor promised was waiting somewhere else. I'd simply stopped letting someone else's chaos convince me that peace wasn't enough.